Hi everyone and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to make a super simple skirt for that aesthetic autumn look. First, acquire some warm tone czech plaid striped fabric. I had 1.5 meters left over of this cotton check, which is a little tight. I would have preferred 2 meters. Make sure it's not something too bulky, heavy or stiff. Next, you don't need a pattern for this skirt. You just need to know your waist measurement and the desired length of the skirt. You will need 2 straight edges of the fabric. Thankfully with checks it is very easy to cut on grain. You can also make it up of panels that are then sewn into one piece. I cut out my fabric to be 30 inches long. I ended up squeezing 2 extra sections from the leftover fabric. I even had to piece one, so 18th century of me. The first seams to sew are any side seams if you had to cut out panels. In my case, it was the piecing on the small panel and then those 2 small panels to the sides of my main rectangle. This will be the back of the skirt. Once those 2 seams were sewn, I pressed them nicely. It's time to do the pleats. I decided to go for knife pleats, which all go in one direction, in my case to the left. But this is up to you. Knife pleats are the easiest and simplest, especially on plaid, check or striped fabric, since you can use the pattern to measure the pleats. I played around with the sizes until I knew the fabric would be down to my waist measurement size. There is maths you can do here, but alas, I am terrible at maths and instead pleated up half the total measurement of the top of the skirt and played with the size of the pleats until it matched half of my waist measurement, plus seam allowance at the back. The pleats are each roughly half an inch, or 3 checked squares. I folded the fabric and pinned in place, going all the way around the skirt. I also manipulated it to make sure that the seams of the extra panels were hidden in a pleat. Step 2 in pleats, baste them. I did 2 rows of basting, roughly half an inch apart. It will make step 3, ironing them, much easier. I'll lay them nicely and press thoroughly. After an initial press, I sprayed the fabric with a small mix of water with a little white vinegar and pressed again. This will help set the pleats, and don't worry, the smell fades. Make sure to test on a scrap of fabric first to make sure your fabric doesn't react weirdly to the vinegar. Next, let's pin up the back seam. Leave a gap at the top equal to the size of your zipper, usually at least 5 inches. My zipper is a little small, but it's the only one I had at hand. Sew this and press the seam open. When pressing, also press the raw edges of the gap at the top inwards, by the same measurement as your seam allowance, in my case 1/2 inch. Then awkwardly and painfully pin your zipper in place from the right side of the fabric, wishing something so practical was easier to sew. Shove this through the machine and pray for the best. A zipper foot helps. For the waistband, cut a rectangle of your fabric equal in length to your waist measurement, plus 1 inch seam allowance. I made my waistband 1 inch wide for a narrow look. I doubled this measurement and added seam allowance for a total of 3 inches for the width of the rectangle. Now the most important part of making a comfortable and useful skirt is, of course, the pockets. However, at this point I had so little fabric left that I was alas only able to cut out 1 pocket. Better one than none. A different option is to cut the pockets out of a different fabric. I usually use the same pocket pattern piece, which is from a vintage 1940s pattern. Pockets are easy though, so I would recommend just drawing out a pocket shape and making sure your phone will fit in it. If your skirt was made up of panels, you can insert the pocket in the beginning when sewing the side seams. As mine wasn't, I tried on the skirt and marked the best placement for the pocket. I undid that pleat and cut a slit into the fabric in the under part of the pleat. The slit is equal to the side bit of the pocket, or as I'm calling it, the mouth. Each pocket is made of 2 bits of fabric. I sewed around the long edge and the curved edge, leaving the mouth and top open. I then carefully turned the raw edges of the slit inwards by 1/4 inch and did the same to the mouth of the pocket. This is then pinned into the slit, making sure no raw edge is showing. I hand sewed this because, well, I had to hand sew something. Disclaimer, anything I hand sew in this video, you can do by machine and it will 100% take less time. I then pinned the pleat back in place and basted it so that the pocket slit was hidden. I then thoroughly pressed again with the vinegar too. This will ensure that your pocket is hidden within the pleat. I then removed this basting once the skirt was done. Back to the waistband. I pressed the waistband in half, then turned 1/2 inch inwards on one of the long edges. This is then pinned to the top of the skirt, right sides together. Make sure you're pinning the raw long edge. Quickly shove through the machine and then you can trim down that seam allowance to reduce bulk. Flip the waistband over to the inside and whip stitch down the folded edge. Or sew by machine, of course. Lastly, for the hem, I had included 2 inches hem allowance when I cut my length to be 30 inches. I turned the raw edge inwards by 1/2 inch and pressed, then turned that again by 1.5 inches and pressed again. Doing a slightly larger hem will help the shape of your skirt. Pick a suitably matching thread. I'm using this lovely silk and sew in your preferred way. I did a small whip stitch by hand, which made the hemming pretty much invisible. I really thought this might be the first video where I don't fell something, but that's just not me. You can finish the skirt seams or not. Depending on your fabric, finishing the seams will ensure your skirt will last longer through washes. You can zigzag across the edges, use an overlocker, bind them with bias tape. The possibilities are endless. I chose my usual method where you can trim down one side of the seam allowance and then fold the longer edge over, encasing the raw edge. This is pinned and sewn by hand. Can also, of course, be done by machine. Last step, go outside in your nice new skirt and enjoy the trees changing colours and the general autumn aesthetic, which makes me feel amazing. Thank you for watching.